All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and good afternoon. Today, the KBI director and I are here to announce a number of arrests and the recent progress we've made with the so-called 287G program. Back in February, 9 months ago, the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, under the direction of the Office of the Attorney General, entered into a so-called Section 287G agreement with the United States Department of Homeland Security. Section 287G refers to the Immigration and Nationality Act, Section 287G. It was a provision drafted in 1996 by Congress and signed by President Clinton, and it recognized that state and local law enforcement have an invaluable role to play in assisting the federal government in enforcing our federal immigration laws. The first 287G agreement was signed by the state of Florida shortly after 9/11. Both local and state law enforcement agencies signed during the Bush administration. And fast forward to the Trump administration, when the Trump administration, his second term, when he took office, Texas was the first and Kansas was the second state law enforcement agency to sign up for Section 287G authority. What is that authority? It allows officers who are specially designated to get training by the federal government so that they can exercise some of the authority of a federal immigration officer. And there are multiple models. Some models are fairly limited, which are for reviewing people who are already in detention in state and county facilities. And there's another one that we have for the KBI. It's called a task force model, and that allows KBI officers who have this special training from time to time to put on their immigration enforcement hat and work as it were as a sort of ICE officer while also being a KBI officer. They have access to ICE databases. They can take custody on behalf of ICE. They can initiate removal proceedings to remove illegal aliens from the country and other such tasks. Between October 24th and November 14th, the four 287G officers in the KBI were involved in making multiple arrests. There are 10 individuals who were arrested. Those 10 individuals are depicted here on the screen. All of these individuals, and this is important, all of these individuals were on the Kansas offender registries already. We have three registries. We have sex offender registries, we have drug offender registries, and we have violent offender registries. There are approximately 48,000 people on those three Kansas registries combined. One of the things that KBI took the initiative to do, which had never been done before by ICE or by any law enforcement entity, is to actually go through all of the names of those 48,000 people and see if any of them were residing illegally in the United States. Now, bear in mind, to be on these registries, you have to have already been committed, you have already been convicted of a sex crime, a drug crime, or another violent offense. And so these are individuals who've already been convicted, have already served their time, and under federal law, they were supposed to have been apprehended leaving the prison and then immediately deported from the country. But for one reason or another, they weren't. And so they continued to reside in Kansas, and not only that, they were required, because of the nature of their offense, to register on these offender registries in the state of Kansas. And so KBI took the initiative to see if there were illegal aliens on this registry, and indeed there were, and these are the first 10, hiding in plain sight. If this had not been done, if KBI had not taken this initiative, if we had not gotten this 287G authority, those individuals would still be residing in Kansas neighborhoods, and these are dangerous individuals. That's why we have a registry. That's why so many Kansans, when they move to a new neighborhood, one of the things they do if they have children is they check and see if there are any sex offenders in their neighborhood. And I think many Kansans would be alarmed to learn that there were individuals residing in Kansas on these registries who should have been removed from the country the moment that they left the prison after serving their sentences. The individuals that were detained by 287G officers of KBI and then transferred to ICE custody for removal have been convicted of many serious offenses, including, and you'll see them listed here, second-degree murder, indecent liberties with a child, molesting children under the age of 18, aggravated battery, distribution of narcotics, including opiates, heroin, and other controlled substances, aggravated assault and criminal discharge of a firearm, and the cultivation and distribution of controlled substances. These non-citizens are in fact nationals of Mexico, Guatemala, Cuba, Somalia, and Ethiopia. And again, remember, these individuals have already been tried, already been convicted of a sex offense, a drug offense, or a violent offense. I won't go through the names in great detail. If you have questions about the specifics, we may be able to answer them. They were all transferred to ICE custody after the 287G officer coordinated the arrest. And it should be noted that these officers are doing more than just these arrests. These are just the ones that I think are the most publicly notable because they were hiding in plain sight on our registries. But the KBI officers are also involved in making arrests, usually as a consequence of a drug bust. So a drug bust occurs, and there are individuals who are going to be prosecuted in Kansas for the offense, but there may be other individuals involved in the drug bust who were found who were illegally present in the United States, and those 287G officers can begin the removal process in coordination with ICE supervision. All of these arrests take place with ICE and the KBI working hand in hand. And now I'd like to turn it over to KBI Director Mattivi for some additional comments before we take your questions.
Let me be perfectly clear. If you are a registered offender, that is because you have been convicted of a very serious offense, whether it's a drug offense, a sex offense, or a violent offense. Registered offenders are some of the most dangerous criminals that we have present in our state. The KBI is not an immigration enforcement agency, but our mission is to keep this state safe, and removing dangerous criminals from our communities helps keep us safe. Let me just close by saying this. If you are a registered offender, whether it's a registered drug offender, a registered sex offender, or a registered violent offender, if you are a registered offender and you are here illegally, you might as well leave now, because we will find you, we will turn you over to ICE, and you will be deported. Thank you, General.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Attorney General, did these people enter the country illegally, or did they forfeit legal status because of their crime?
Yes. There are both categories.
Okay.
Several of these individuals entered the country illegally. I believe at least one was deported once already. But there are also individuals on this list who were legally present, and then they committed this serious crime, and in so doing, and were convicted. And as a result of that, they become illegally present. There are many federal statutes that say once you commit certain crimes, your legal status disappears and you are deportable at that point.
Deportation doesn't take place automatically after prison?
You would think so. In theory, the way Congress drafted these laws, it's supposed to work that way. It's supposed to work the way that an individual finishes serving time in a state facility, and then immediately ICE shows up and takes the individual as he's leaving the detention facility. That didn't happen in these cases. Some administrations in Washington have been lax in enforcing that, in actually executing the law that says you have to pick them up when they're completing their state offense. The Biden administration was notoriously lax in doing so. In fact, they instituted policies on the first day of President Biden's term in office where they said essentially, we're not going to be making arrests and removals unless you get special approval from a supervisor, and as a result, I don't know the exact number, but a large number of individuals left the facilities where they were serving their sentences, and there was no ICE officer there because the ICE officer couldn't get the approval he needed to pick them up. And so, and one other point that should be mentioned here, again, to reiterate it, ICE is very busy, especially under President Trump. And so this is where Section 287G comes in so handy. We in Kansas have a special concern for the safety of Kansans. And as a result, the KBI took the initiative to say, look, let's look at the list of all of these dangerous individuals and see if any of these individuals are in the country illegally, and we can make those neighborhoods a little bit safer by removing these dangerous individuals. And that wouldn't have happened if we hadn't gotten that 287G authority. The ICE officers themselves are on a multitude of missions, But by doing this, we are assisting them and assisting all of the law enforcement agencies of this state in making our state safer.
The ones that came into the country illegally, do you know how they got into the country illegally?
I have reviewed.
You might repeat the question, I'm not sure.
Oh,
if
yeah.
everybody's able to hear it.
The question was, do we know how they got into the country illegally? I've reviewed all 10 of them. I know that there's at least one who entered without inspection, which is the legal term for sneaking across the border. I believe there may be one who overstayed his visa as well. There may be multiples of those categories. And we can get that information, Brad, if you want to go specifically through it.
How long have the 10 been out on the streets since being released?
It varies. Some of them have been out for years. Let me say that again. Some of them have been on the streets, living in Kansas neighborhoods for years since being released from custody. Again, I didn't memorize the dates, but I would say the majority of them were released from custody in the last 6 years.
Have you worked through the whole offender registry? Can we expect more names to come out?
Again, the question was, have we worked through the entire registry, and can you expect more names to come out? The answer is our 287G trained officers are working through the registry. There will be more. So yeah.
Could I follow
Yeah,
up
do you want
on
to follow that?
If I could follow up on that question, there are approximately 48,000 names in the offender database. We took that registry and gave it to ICE. ICE has been working through it and notifying us of the folks when they determine that these people are here illegally. They notify us, send a package back to us. Our folks have the time to do it. Our folks are doing some of the work as well. But I just want to make clear that ICE is ICE and Homeland Security have been a very valuable and collaborative partner in this entire effort. We really appreciate the way that they collaborate and cooperate with us.
When did you all start handing the registry to ICE? When did they get the list?
The question from John was, when did the list go to ICE? That was back in about June of this year.
So it took them several months of work to get you some you could
It
go pick up.
It did take several months of work for them to screen through all 48,000 names and begin returning packages back to us, yes.
And John, part of that is every single one of these is an open and shut case with respect to removability. In addition to the fact they are already convicted of the crime, ICE wants to make sure that the identity is correct, the basis for removing them from the United States is correct. So they have to take their time and do their checks as well. But then the KBI executes the arrest and takes custody and then takes the individual to ICE.
Did you all have any trouble when you went to pick these folks up? There weren't any standoffs or anything like that? Where'd you pick them up?
You asked if there was any trouble when we went to pick the folks up. All of the arrests were executed without any sort of difficulty. The areas were primarily Wichita, Hutch, Newton, and Dodge City.
Did they know they were still breaking the law, that they truly should have been deported? Whether they...
I can't answer what they knew, Eric, sorry.
With the list still being gone through, do you all have any sort of estimates in terms of how many other people could be arrested?
Our initial look suggests that it would be in the 3 figures. That we don't. All of this is contingent upon ICE doing their final check and saying, "Yep, 100% removable." But our guess is it will be in that sort of range.
Just for quick clarification, are non-citizens, these are all individuals who have committed a further crime, are non-citizens who haven't committed any further crimes being prosecuted as well?
No, these are, so under this specific project, this is looking only at non-citizens who committed a crime having nothing to do with immigration and who are also illegally in the country, either prior to committing that crime or because of committing that crime.
And let me follow up on that just quickly. So if I understood your question correctly, it's are non-citizens who are not committing crimes being targeted under this operation? I want to again make it crystal clear what we're doing here. KBI is not an immigration enforcement agency. We are an agency that's tasked with the mission of keeping Kansas safe. These are some of our most dangerous criminals, and they are here illegally. We are using this tool to get the worst of the worst out of our community. That's the purpose of this operation. John, you got a follow-up?
Yeah, a follow-up though. If you go, say, to pick these folks up, or you arrive there and you discover that there are 4 or 5 other people living with that person who are in the country illegally, do you do anything with that? Do you call ICE and say, hey, by the way, or?
John, I love your hypothetical. We could do them all day long. The point of this operation is that we are using our 287G authority to take some of the worst criminals that are present in this state and who are here illegally. We're getting them out of our state, and that will make our state safer.
You said ICE is checking through that list of 48,000 to make sure, see who has legal status and who doesn't. Once they have someone, do they check again to make sure they are here legally or not legally?
Yeah, ICE has a whole series of procedures they go through when an individual is detained and then put in the removal process. And it kind of depends on the individual's specific situation. So if the individual's already been adjudicated by an immigration judge at some time in the past, then that one's pretty quick and automatic because they already have an order of removal from the judge. There might be an individual who claims that somehow he might have an immigration attorney who will try to argue that maybe the offense he committed didn't qualify to make him removable. And so ICE will go through each of these, has to notify them of their rights, et cetera. But suffice it to say, when ICE said, yes, absolutely go arrest these 10 individuals, when we presented them to ICE, ICE was very confident that they don't have a leg to stand on to say they can remain in the country.
Mr. Attorney General, do you have any indication that how many of these, have already been deported?
I don't know which ones are still in the country. My guess is that some of the ones, as I said, it started on October 24th. My guess is that some may already have been removed.
Other states are doing this too?
That's a really good question. I'm not aware of any states yet that are doing this, although I have spoken personally with another state attorney general who, once he heard about what we're doing, has said, okay, we're going to start doing that in our state as well. I wouldn't be surprised if Texas is doing something similar. They've been, very keen to use their 287G authority.
I think you touched on this, but just want to be clear. What are the classes of crime that will get?
Yeah, so there are 3 registries. There's drug offenders, sex offenders, and violent offenders. And so the 48,000 is the combined total of those.
And let me, if I could follow up on that as well. Your question was what categories of offenses. I just want to make it clear what offenses these people had committed that resulted in them being on the registry. And we talked about it briefly, but I think it warrants repeating. Second-degree murder, indecent liberties with a child under 16, molesting a child under 18, that's a California conviction, aggravated battery, felony distribution of narcotics, aggravated assault and criminal discharge of a firearm, and cultivation and distribution of controlled substances. Those are the things that these folks had been convicted of and yet remained illegally in this country.
And as you probably noticed, all 3 categories are included there. You had drug offenses, you had violent offenses, and you had sex offenses.
Mr. Attorney General, if you come here legally and you commit a crime, is it any crime you forfeit your legal status, or do you have to commit a felony, or is there a list somewhere in the statute?
There is a list in federal law of which crimes render you deportable. So, for example, you might even have a green card, which is legal permanent residence, which is the highest alien status you can have. And usually it's from green card status that a person may try to become a U.S. citizen. But even if you're a green card holder, you can lose that if you commit certain criminal offenses. And I believe the essence of your question was, are there some offenses, some low-level crimes that you could commit that would not render you removable? And the answer is yes. But they all committed high enough level crimes that those who had legal status lost their legal status.
I have a question regarding the domestic case in Osage County. I was wondering if you have any updates on that, and also just how it works with the domestic case and trying to protect our state troopers.
Your question was about the events over the weekend in Osage County and whether I have an update. What I know is that all of the law enforcement officials who were injured in the shootout are expected to survive. I know that one is still in the hospital, and I know that one has been released. I've heard, I don't know about the status of the other two. I'm glad that you tied it into domestic. As you all know, we lost 4 Kansas law enforcement officers in the line of duty this summer. 3 of those 4 line of duty deaths involved investigations that had something to do with domestic violence, just like the event on Saturday morning in Osage County. Domestic violence incidents are incredibly volatile, they're incredibly dangerous, and we're seeing that violence unfortunately directed more and more at law enforcement.
Mr. Mattivi, on that to follow up, have you all established a narrative of what exactly the call was about? Who was curious how the suspect became identified as the suspect, and who opened fire first and all of that? Has that been established yet?
I can tell you, having looked at the scene, John, it was incredibly chaotic. Having looked at the scene, I can tell you it's a miracle that all 4 of those officers managed to live through that. But the exact details of how that went down, that's what our agents are still working on today.
California conviction was mentioned. How many of these people committed crimes in the state and being returned to the community?
9 were in the state? I think it's 9. Yeah, I think we could find out the exact number for you, but my recollection is that there's 1 California conviction, and then the 9 others were convictions in Kansas.
Were people actively hiding these folks? Or, I mean, I guess they were on the registry. So
No, I mean, that's why I use the phrase hiding in plain sight. They're on a public registry. Members of the public can look up their names and see what crimes they committed. And that's why it's, I think, such an important mission that the KBI has executed here and is executing with the collaboration of the Department of Homeland Security. I mean,
And there are 4 agents who are trained to do this?
4 at this point, but additional agents are receiving the training.
You said you started going through the list in June, and then when did the arrest start?
October 24th, and they continued through November 14th.
And when do you plan on continuing the next arrest?
I'm not sure. I haven't spoken to the 4 agents. Director Mattivi might be able to answer. I'm not sure when the next ones will occur, but there will be more. And this is the first time we've made a public statement about it, and this is effectively giving notice, as the KBI director has, that hey, we're going through this list, and if you are on a sex offender list, a violent offender list, and you are illegally in the United States, we will eventually get to you. So you'd be better off leaving on your own while you can.
What else are the 4 agents working on besides this specific operation?
The 4 agents who've been trained, the 4 agents who've received the 287G training are agents assigned to what's called our Special Operations Division. So they normally work on complex narcotics cases. That's their standard caseload.
And it's complex narcotics cases that oftentimes will, if the narcotics have been shipped in from outside of the country, you might have non-citizens involved in the trafficking of the drugs, and those are the cases most often where in the process of fighting that particular type of crime, in this case narcotics, drug crimes, you might find also an individual who is illegally in the United States, and that offers another tool where a call can be made to ICE, and ICE can determine, is this an individual that we would like to go ahead and remove?
So with the 10 arrests, would you consider this to be the only arrest related to this specific training, or have there been other arrests made since the training has happened?
So the question was, are these the only arrests made under our 287G authority, or have there been others? Is that the question? Until now, most of the folks that we encountered who fell into this category, we were working jointly with HSI on, so HSI took care of those arrests. With regard to this kind of enforcement action, I will tell you that it is very much an ongoing operation.
And HSI, as you're probably aware, is a division of Department of Homeland Security, and it's part of ICE.
And your staff, one of your staffs will give us a list.
Yes, Denidri can get you.
All on the website, it's all on AG
And that'll include a link to this as well?
It has this, it has all their names, it has where they're from and what they were.
And not to be too picky here, but digital renderings of these photos?
You'll have it in that form.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.